Why is art and culture important? I think it's a fundamental question.
Les arts, c'est là où on va se définir comme société, c'est là qu'on va se définir comme peuple, comme pays.
Arts and culture are the very core of our identity and our existence. That's what defines us, that's what distinguishes us from others.
If you ask an artist why art is important, you might get their hackles up a little bit because they already know why art is important. They have personal experience with it. And maybe to artists it feels like the answer should be a given.
Ducked into a driveway because you're hiding from someone.
But of course, if we still need to give other reasons, the simplest reason why arts and culture are important is that it's a fabulous investment.
Lorsqu'on regarde les statistiques en Amérique du Nord ici, alors lorsque vous investissez $1 dans les arts de la culture, il y a une retombée économique de $7, comme on dit communément un spin-off de $7. Au niveau économique, c'est incroyable, au niveau de l'effet que ça, au niveau économique pour des communautés comme la nôtre et toutes les communautés, que ce soit ici au Nouveau-Brunswick ou ailleurs.
Si tu vis dans une ville qui a une théâtre, ben là, tu as de la tourisme, parce que les gens viennent des autres villes pour venir voir des pièces de théâtre. Et quand ils viennent à ton ville, ils vont rester dans des hôtels. Et même les gens de ton ville qui vont au théâtre, ils vont probablement aller manger avant le théâtre, faire une soirée, alors ils mangent à des restaurants. Alors ça, ils vont contribuer à l'économie par manger à un restaurant, aller au théâtre, puis après ça, peut-être aller prendre un verre de vin après.
Richard Florida, who's written extensively about creative economies and the idea that different economies around the world that have vibrant arts and cultural sectors, they attract employees, especially high-tech employees, stay in communities that have all, dance and art and literary festivals, this sort of thing. This makes our communities more livable for everybody.
And the thing about narrative, the thing about literature and art, is it imagines into being, and this is a kind of theoretical concept, but art imagines into being the places that it explains. So we know who we are by virtue of the artists who tell us who we are.
We cannot be looking for others, someone coming from Hollywood or someone coming from overseas, to help us preserve our culture, our heritage. So therefore, the responsibility lies on our shoulders to preserve what is ours, distinctly ours, to promote it, to support it, and to have it there for future generations.
There's all manner of negative designations that get attached to New Brunswick. The simple fact of the matter is, if you look at the artistic work done in New Brunswick, artists are not saying that at all, but we tend to hear the negative that comes from the outside more readily than we hear the positive that comes from the inside.
Ordinary night inside your head, ignoring all the signs you should have read.
Art is important in the same way that a lot of the things of the spirit and the mind are important. And we can't really say, you can say that a carpenter is important because he makes you a house. And in New Brunswick, you need a house. A farmer is important because he provides you food. But somehow people have, since the very beginning of Homo sapiens, they've decided that we are more than our bodies. There's something about our spirit, our soul, our brain that needs nourishing. And and how do we do that?
Funding for the arts is always a challenge. This is when I get together with my colleagues across the country. This is what we talk about. Where are the sources of revenue? What are funders looking for? How challenging is it to get, and all of that kind of thing. And what I find when I talk to my colleagues elsewhere in the country is that there are many sources that they can look at. There's never enough. You could always do more with more. But when I talk to people in Saskatchewan, in Ontario, in British Columbia, there are 5 or 6 or 7 different sources that they can look at to help fund their activities and to keep costs lower for the people that they're serving. And that's not true. The context is different. In particular provinces, Nova Scotia is different, and Quebec is different, and we all operate in a different context. But New Brunswick in Canada, in my experience, is unique in how limited the multiple sources of funding are. There's government, 2 or 3 sort of major players, and some sort of small, municipalities and small budgets from community foundations, and that's really it.
It really is everybody's responsibility. We're not just looking for government handouts. We're trying to make communities work together to support communities.
If there's anything that Newfoundland artists have taught us, if there's anything that Acadian artists have taught us, and that is responsibility for your artistic community starts at home. It's built to some extent by federal and provincial subsidy, but really it's local people who are responsible for managing and for kind of what we might call a cultural stewardship. That always has to start at home, and most of the responsibility has to begin at home.
None of it is sure. I mean, from year to year, we don't know what we're going to get, if we're going to get. It's very difficult to be entrepreneurial and businesslike when you have no assurance from year to year that you're going to get anything. So that's a very difficult way to do business. So I think arts and culture, it has grown up an awful lot, even just in the last 15 or 20 years. We've become much more businesslike, much more entrepreneurial. But if we still have these constraints on us to not have things such as core funding, not have that kind of support to know from year to year that will even exist, that makes business very difficult.
Parce que la façon dont je vois ça présentement, quand je rencontre des jeunes qui veulent être artistes, il y a seulement 2 façons. C'est soit que tu te fais financer en appliquant chaque année, qui peut être stressant, surtout quand tu es en début de carrière, lorsque tu dépends des fonds pour survivre. Ou que c'est parce qu'il y a des gens qui croient dans ce que tu fais ou qui aiment, donc qui aiment collectionner le travail dont tu fais.
I think that one thing that people need to understand is that while we are always looking for large donations, and typically those large donations come from corporations, even a very small donation can make a huge difference, and I can give you an example of how that might work. So in our outreach programming, where we offer arts-based workshops to members of underprivileged communities, we are able to offer free skills training in the arts to individuals for approximately $20 per person. And so if someone makes a donation of $500, how many people are they reaching? How many lives are they changing with just that small donations?
Il y a un autre lieu où moi j'aimerais voir plus de développement dans les arts, dans la Nouveau-Brunswick et dans l'Atlantique en général, mais souvent on n'a pas assez d'argent parce que toutes les autres choses, il faut qu'on fasse toutes les autres choses avant qu'on passe à quelque chose d'autre. Mais la prochaine étape que moi je crois qui est vraiment importante pour notre région en particulier, c'est le développement d'un discours critique autour de l'art, et ça veut dire l'écriture.
Because look, in an environment where there's no provincial encyclopedia, no contemporary history of the province of New Brunswick, no provincial curriculum, and these things continue to exist, there's all the more reason to cultivate those resources for self-knowledge right here. And if we don't do that, then we become victim to what other people write about us and what other people say about us. And what they've written and said about us is largely not very positive. We're considered one of the have-not regions of the country, when in fact there's been a history and an abundance of self-reliance and sustainability in the East Coast. It's just that without the intellectual apparatus, without the artistic apparatus to reflect that, it's been very hard to convince our own citizenry and citizens from the rest of the country that what happens here really has mattered.
This is it, the time has come, a time to settle down. Before I walk these city streets and see you not around.
L'art, c'est ça, permet un regard sur nous autres mêmes, donc je crois que ça reste important, c'est quelque chose qui... moi, que comme société, on devrait ne pas juste considérer ça comme un luxe, mais une nécessité, en tout cas, pour garder notre tête sur les épaules et savoir où est-ce qu'on s'en va. Ouais.
There's a fabulous quote by Northrop Frye in which he talks about imagination, and it is, "The fundamental job of imagination in ordinary life is to create out of the society we have to live in a vision of the society we want to live in." And I think that's what arts and culture does for us. It helps to educate our imagination, helps us to envision what the world could be like. And it doesn't matter what your job is, if you're in an industrial sector, you're a lawyer, you're picking up garbage. I mean, you need to have this inspiration. You need to have a vision of how you can make the world a better place. And I think that's where arts and culture come in and help us.
And you'll be gone before I know it, and before I know you well, and I shouldn't have to say it now. No, I shouldn't have to say it. Yeah, you'll be gone before I know it, and before I know you well, and I shouldn't